Dystin Continent. The Epic of the Marsh Drought. By Rika Klein. Prologue. The Dystin Continent was a wide expansive world, and each region had terrain that catered to the lifeforms that covered the land. The entire continent was a land of turmoil, but that turmoil churned beneath the surface of the everyday lives of these Dystonians. The lifeforms that covered the land led simple enough lives, eating, drinking, making merry with friends and raising families in spite of it all. This first epic takes place in the marshy region at the edge of the prairie where two friends Rico and Lin Qiu spent their summers. It shares with us a glimpse of their daily lives and the small trials that refine their characters. Chapter 1. Rico was a lazy and carefree crocodile-type being, who spent his days lounging under the sun in his heavy chainmail overcoat, swinging his sole weapon, the rusty cleaver with a chipped blade and sloppily bound handle, while he waddled to the source pond to fetch a snack every now and then. Soul weapons were the artifacts that materialized when new beings were born on the Dystin Continent. Each artifact in some ways reflected the traits of the being it was connected to. Most beings took their soul weapon with them everywhere as it was an artifact that they used in battle, whether for offense or defense. On the Dystin Continent, battle was a common occurrence. The source pond was a cool, still body of water that was shrouded in the shade of cypress trees. Most of the beings who lived in the marsh got their food from the source pond. Rico's favorite snack was the tiny silver fish that swam about in the shallow parts of the pool. Their scales glistened whenever a stray ray of sunlight caught their swift shapes flitting around under the water's surface. To catch this silver fish, Rico would plunge happily from the shores of the pond, sometimes making a big splash if he had been startled before jumping, and wade around in the cool water floating silently along, pretending to be a log until a few careless fish swam past his large toothy jaws. He would then gobble up those few careless silver fish and continue his lazy floating on the pond surface until he got bored or was full. Chapter 2. Summer was Rico's favorite time of year. It was when his best friend Lin Qiu came to visit. Lin Qiu and Rico had a great time swimming in the source pond and basking in the shade of the cypress trees. Lin Qiu was a stork-type being who was as neat as Rico was sloppy, and as careful as Rico was carefree. His black and white feathers were always spotless, and his sole weapon was a well-kept flute that he kept tucked inside the sleeves of his white robes. Whenever Lin Qiu came to visit, Rico took a break from catching silver fish for himself. Lin Qiu was the one to fetch all the fishes from the source pond for them both. Lin Qiu had a special way of swooping up the silver fish from the source pond. First, he would go out to the pond side and take out his flute. Then he would play a few notes that always made the silver fish herd together in a small school close to the shore. When all the silver fish were gathered, Lin Qiu would swoop in and scoop them up in his beak. Lin Qiu would always share his haul of silver fish with Rico, and they would laugh and talk on the shores of the source pond while they snacked away.